The PlayStation 2, nostalgic, comforting, and with it being the world's best-selling console of all time, appreciated across the whole world. A console with an extensive library and countless classics. It's no surprise that so many PS2 games have been ported over the years, appearing on both Sony's PS3 and PS4. We can quickfire dozens of games almost, franchises like Metal Gear Solid, Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy, Star Ocean, Grand Theft Auto, God of War, and currently being shown by Code Veronica, Resident Evil. All have made their way onto modern platforms, and all have received trophy support. You could make an impressive trophy collection from these PS2 ports alone, hundreds of hours replaying your nostalgic favourites, whilst earning trophies for your contemporary collection. But what about the PS2 games that haven't made it? Whether it's down to licensing, popularity, or any other reason, this video is a wish list for the games that have yet to receive that treatment. Games that I cherish, grew up playing, and have always hoped for a re-release for them, which would of course include some lovely trophy support. These are the PlayStation 2 games I wish had trophies. I feel like this is an obvious choice and is widely regarded as a near-perfect action game, which released in a time where movie tie-ins were rushed out of the door to profit quickly from their big-name movie releases. I remember the Two Towers game surprising everyone by actually being good, and that's because of the accuracy to the movies, the graphics at the time, the cool character selection, the leveling system, and the very heavy, impactful combat. Mastering the parries and combos was challenging but always a rewarding joy. It was always addictive to aim for the highest combo and score possible. I can definitely see stuff like achieve a chain of 100 kills without being hit for a trophy. It would also be awesome to get trophies for leveling each character and defeating different enemy types, completing the game on the hardest difficulty whilst earning perfect scores. Oh, and how about a local co-op playthrough between Legolas and Gimli for a trophy called What About Side by Side with a Friend? The trophy list almost writes itself. A collection would suit this best on modern consoles, as Return of the King was just as well received. It had more levels and more playable characters, but the first of the two has always stuck with me. I'm guessing between EA and licensing hell, we will never see this come into play, which is a massive shame. I went back to grab some footage and ended up replaying half of the game with Gimli. It really does hold up well, even today. Hopefully, after the shambolic Gollum game, someone looks back to this classic and gets a remaster or spiritual successor going. Has there ever been a PS2 3D fighting game re-release? Maybe something Persona Arena related comes to mind, but only one really comes to me for sure, and that's Tekken Tag HD on the PS3. Poor Mortal Kombat then, and its PS2 era, which was a strange transition from the original MK trilogy to their first 3D game MK4 on the PS1, to then finally the 3D PS2 era. Deadly Alliance, Deception, and Armageddon. Now, Armageddon featured every Mortal Kombat character to date, a really impressive roster size, but it lost a lot of individual details like unique fatalities. Deadly Alliance was the first of the 3D trilogy, and although really good for that first attempt, it was a bit light on content. It's still one of my favourites for featuring the most wacky reptile costume, and for bringing in newcomer Frost. That leaves Deception, the middle game, being my favourite of the three. It's the most content heavy and feature rich and has an excellent roster. The trophies could easily span the many and awesome game modes. A massive, simple crypt to unlock everything from new characters, costumes, art and secret codes. A huge single player called Conquest mode that I could see a lot of trophies being attached to. Then trophies for earning certain amounts of coin, performing every fatality, that kind of stuff that fits really well in other MK games with trophies. I can't forget the absolutely unhinged bonus games, Chess Combat and Puzzle Fighter, both surprisingly in-depth and playable. It's only now, the newest entry, Mortal Kombat 1, that the PS2 games have received a bit of recognition, as it's full of returning characters from this era, like Nitara, Ashura and Havok. I would still like to revisit these older classic games on modern consoles, as the amount of content is just awesome, and would really suit us trophy hunters. This is an often forgotten console gem, a real-time strategy game where you can play as the 3 deadliest species in the universe: aliens, predators, and the colonial marines. 3 different campaigns with 3 different playstyles made for an excellent, varied game. Imagine the trophy art and name variety being able to pull from both movie franchises, much like 2010's Aliens vs Predator. I love how they translate the 3 different species to real-time strategy units. The Marines have snipers, gunners, and sentry guns, the more usual unit types. It's not until you become the aliens or predators that things get a bit more interesting. Predator units have access to cloaking devices and advanced weaponry, weapons like the disc, spears, and plasma casters. They're generally fewer in number, but make up for it in damage and power. Being the aliens is all about gaining ground through expanding the hive. The goal is to grow by converting the other units you defeat and capture, by ensuring you have enough eggs for each new unit. It may not be as in-depth as Command & Conquer or Age of Empires, but it plays surprisingly well for a console RTS. And this unique spin on the genre left an impression on me, and I've always hoped for some kind of re-release. Featuring no multiplayer, the trophies could be tied to completion, collectibles, unit creation, and difficulty. The only Alien strategy game that has released after this is Aliens Dark Descent, which in all honesty I've still got in my back catalogue to play, but I'll be thinking of extinction whilst doing so. The list of Resident Evil games that have not had a port or remake is getting smaller and smaller by the day, to the point where it's easier to say what hasn't been re-released. The ones they've left out make sense, other than the awesome Outbreak series. Something so ahead of its time, an online cooperative survival horror experience. Capcom had decided to make 3 online games to take advantage of the PS2's processing power and online capabilities. One I can't remember, one was Resident Evil Outbreak, and the third was actually the very first Monster Hunter, which you could say did pretty well. Outbreak did well enough to warrant a sequel. I don't see how Capcom have not attempted to remake this or something like it. They're stubborn, that's for sure, refusing to remake, port, or re-release Outbreak or Dino Crisis. Instead, I've got to remind you of what they have tried making recently in Outbreak's place. Umbrella Corps, an absolute shambles of an online multiplayer game. This was meant to be an anniversary celebration game. Reverse or Reverse, another failed multiplayer deathmatch experience featuring characters from different games that was outright abandoned by the developer. Then we have Resistance, Resident Evil Resistance, whatever it is, a fair attempt at an asymmetrical multiplayer, but was still chasing a trend. And lastly, Operation Raccoon City, which to be honest was pretty good for a PS3 cooperative shooter. An Outbreak File 1 and 2 collection or port with online functionality would do better than all of the others combined. And the trophies would be fantastic, with all the different characters to use and scenarios to complete, all on the multiple difficulties. Who can forget the zoo, which in hindsight is one of the worst places to go in a zombie outbreak, or the simple but effective subway. These scenarios were dripping with atmosphere, and the multiplayer systems worked so well for the time. I can imagine some tough trophies like completing a scenario with only a melee weapon or without healing. Resi has some really cool, staple trophy types that appear in nearly every game. Things like no death runs or speed runs. I love the uniqueness of these games compared to other Resident Evils. The multiple characters were especially cool, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. My favourite was always Yoko because she could carry more than others. But Kevin was also cool with his advanced handgun stance. Multiplayer trophies are a blessing and a curse, but I just know this one would be popular. So come on Capcom, make it already so I can earn some more cool Resi trophies. If there's one game I could will into existence onto the PS5, it would be TimeSplitters 2. The sheer amount of content this game has would be dizzying for a trophy hunter. We're talking unlockable characters, challenge maps, different difficulties for the single player, map creator, and of course all of the multiplayer modes and whatever trophies that would come with. The fate of a modern TimeSplitters that was announced only to be cruelly cancelled truly hurts. I think everyone would enjoy a simple port, yet alone a brand new game in a series, but it's not looking very likely. TimeSplitters 1 was my first ever PS2 game that I didn't even have a memory card for at the time. I would happily play through the single player only to reset and do it all again the following day. TimeSplitters 2 updated everything that worked from the first, introducing more weapons, maps, guns, and a more fleshed out single player. It was a huge step up from the original. A re-release of the TimeSplitters trilogy onto modern consoles would gather so much interest and momentum that I wonder why it took 20 odd years to release a new one in the first place. Life can be very cruel sometimes.
We shouldn't be in the research center without security clearance. I'm telling you, I heard gunshots. They're killers if they find out. Come on, coward.
There are loads of other PS2 games I would love to talk about. It's worth noting that many of these games do have Retro Achievements, which is a fan-made achievement tracker for older games and systems, and it works through emulators. It receives constant updates and support. It's really awesome. I often think about including the games and their achievements in some of my videos. I'll pop the link in the description if you want to check it out. The only downside is there's so much to earn, and the lists are generally harder than most things on PlayStation. I feel like PlayStation trophy hunting also takes up enough time as it is. Anyway, that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I think I could get a couple more out of this interesting subject. Please consider subscribing if you'd like to see more, but take it easy, enjoy your day, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. See ya.